Welcome to How to Secure Exec Buy-in for Wellbeing. If you have never been to any wellbeing events by CWH before, extra special welcome to you. My name is Carli Phillips. I am a wellbeing keynote speaker. I'm a wellbeing researcher and CEO of Corporate Wellbeing Hub, mental health first aider and nutritionist. Before we start today's session, I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I'm dialing in from the land of the Bunurong people today. I pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge anyone on this call with lived experience or caring of those with mental ill health. And just acknowledge each of you for joining and carving out an hour today to focus on how we are going to secure exec buy-in for wellbeing. Why are we talking about this topic? Well, number one, I did a survey last year of all of our customers, and this was a highly requested topic. It is probably the number one challenge I hear from companies that are really trying to set up wellbeing. They usually say trying to get leadership buy-in is one of the biggest challenges they face. So it's a really important topic to try and learn the process and learn the evidence that execs need. But also I've got my own experience of this from being a wellbeing lead, both in a big business and in a little business, but also helping clients trying to do this top down and bottom up. So it's a very close topic to my heart, one I have gone through myself and now helping clients to do. So what will happen in today's session is I'm going to cover the top down and the ground up approaches to show you both perspectives and the pros and cons of those. We're going to look at the legal obligations that execs worry about and what they are looking for to invest. So I'm going to show you what they are. Got secrets from the boardroom and a strong business case to pitch. So I'm actually going to give you an example business case on how you would pitch wellbeing to execs. And then I have a secret announcement that only those of you on this call are going to hear about today, because we're not even launching it until the 1st of March, but it's really relevant to today's topic. So I really wanted to share it with you. During the session, please use the chat box. I'm going to take questions and discussion all the way through, because today's is really about, this topic in particular is really about your workplace specifically, and it's going to look very different to the next workplace or the next business along. So as we go through each section, please jump into the chat, put in your ideas, your specific context or questions, anything that comes up, because the discussion is really something we get a lot of positive feedback about these events. So the more you contribute, the more you and other people get out of the session. Let's begin. Please grab your mobile phones and scan the code on the screen. Today's question is, what is your biggest challenge with execs? What's the first thing that comes into your mind that you think, yep, this is my biggest problem? Maybe they have told you what their objection is. Maybe they haven't. Maybe the biggest challenge is a communication one. I don't know. But when I say to you, what is your biggest challenge with execs, particularly in regards to wellbeing, but perhaps more broader, what comes into your mind for your business? Now, this is a completely anonymous poll, so your name does not show up on this, but it will just give you a chance to write out some of your concerns, some of your pain points, and share that with the group. Okay, number one and number two, both cost related and budget related, and we are going to deep dive into that today. I just keep refreshing my screen to make sure that the responses pop up. Understanding the scope and importance of work health and safety and wellbeing. Yeah, that's a great one. And it is one that is certainly really highly elevated right now. So we are seeing execs and organizations in general just getting a much, much better understanding of why we need to focus on this, particularly in the work health and safety space. So absolutely. Capacity in the team. They agree with things in principle, but we are running under-resourced and never have time to implement. Now, what is it about wellbeing leads and work health and safety leads that makes you so, what is the word? Such a target for taking on extra responsibility? There is something about this role that I often hear people say, okay, I'm now trying to run the wellbeing program, but I also do work health and safety. I also do injury management. I'm the return to work specialist. Maybe I do the insurance stuff as well. It's really, really common for people in this role to be double or triple hatting. So yeah, I absolutely hear that capacity one. And available resources to implement a structured program. Okay, interesting. So if there's anything else, jump into the chat and let me know. We're starting here thinking about what are the biggest challenges that we have with execs. Let me explain the top-down and the ground-up approach just as we start to deep dive into this topic. The top-down approach to me is having really secure leadership buy-in. It's those leaders that say, well-being and employee well-being is really important to me, and I want this to be a high priority for our organization. It might have come into your organizational values, and we are going to back it. And what that means for you is that what you want to implement, you've already got the leadership buy-in for, which is fantastic. The ground-up approach is more of an in-field, peer-to-peer, employee-based approach where we're really asking employees to be the advocates and the enablers of well-being. Now, what happens with top-down and ground-up is that, okay, ideally, we would love to have both. In every organization, yes, of course we would, but we often don't have that, right? So it is okay to have both top-down and ground-up approaches. That is ideal. But it is also okay to have one or the other. So if you've just got top-down and it's really hard to get ground-up, that will still work. And if you cannot get top-down and you want to start with ground-up, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute, I have also seen that work. So if you've got both approaches, great, ticking all the boxes. If you haven't, I want to reassure you that either one or the other can be successful. And what usually happens is you start to build momentum and you get a flow-on effect, and you'll start to get the other approach and the other buy-in as well. So let's start with top-down approach. If you have already got one or two or a few leaders bought into wellbeing, it doesn't need to be your CEO, your head director, your GM, just anyone in your leadership team. My recommendation to you is to form a very close relationship with that person and explain what you are wanting to do with wellbeing in your workplace, and ask that person to be a role model. So number one, let's role model health and wellbeing. We'll try and motivate people that way. So we'll share photos, we'll share videos, we will tell stories of how and when and why we focus on wellbeing for ourselves. So we know that role modeling piece absolutely works. Number two, informal endorsements. So things like giving permission, encouraging leave, encouraging breaks, really just giving people permission to look after themselves. So this informal endorsement usually comes at a team level. So when you've got a team leader saying, hey, your health and wellbeing is really important to me. I want to encourage you to look after yourself. Make those commitments to your family where you need to, and we'll try and be as flexible as we can with your workload or your work times so that we can make sure we are looking after your health and wellbeing. Number three, formally endorse. So this might be in terms of having policies or strategies or procedures in place, perhaps about flexibility, perhaps about leave entitlement. So we're seeing things like mental health days or well-being leave or extra leave days in addition to your standard annual leave days. It might be about employee benefits. So it might be adding in a few extra employee benefits, maybe on physical fitness, maybe on mental fitness. So getting you funding for your wellbeing program could fall into this formal endorsement side. So these are 3 examples. Don't be put off if you don't have your entire exec team bought in, but if you've got 1 or 2, I really recommend going to meet with them and having a chat about how do we role model, how do we informally endorse, and how do we formally endorse. If you've got any other ideas, please share them because it will really enrich a lot of the learning for everyone on the call. So jump into the chat if you've got other ideas about how you share a lot of this lovely stuff from the top down approach. Now, given you are at a seminar entitled How to Secure Exec Buy-in, let's dive into that when we have an issue and they're actually not bought in. I want to share with you the number 1 reason we can convince execs to invest time and money into wellbeing. The number 1 reason is employee retention. Here's what we know about employees right now. 23% are engaged, 67% are quiet quitting. Huge amount, right? And 11% loud quitting. These guys are just walking out the door. What I am hearing employees saying is there are now so many companies in Australia that are providing really, really solid wellbeing programs and support for me that I actually don't need to work in this environment anymore. I'm going to work somewhere else that gives me flexibility or that gives me wellbeing benefits or that supports my mental health. Now, retention is a massive problem right across so many different industries in Australia right now. So we're still seeing huge workforce shortages. Have a look at those stats. 43% say they're actively seeking and 81% say this is a good time to find a job. So even if your execs are still saying, yeah, wellbeing is still this airy, fairy thing, the number 1 reality for a CEO or an exec is to retain the really good people they have working for them. This is a really high pain point for all senior leaders. So this would be the very first discussion point I would be having. It's talking about the new employee expectation, right? The new employee expectation. If I am not getting my wellbeing looked after, I will walk out the door and go somewhere else. Number 2 is the legal obligations. So this is huge, right? This is really making such a significant difference in how we are creating mentally healthy workplaces. So this is exactly what happened with physical safety 20 years ago, where the regulations came in. We had to do audits and risk assessments, and directors of companies were the word I'm looking for, legally bound. If there was a workers' comp claim or something went terribly wrong, you ended up in court, the directors were solely responsible. Now, the same thing is now happening in mental health now, which is wonderful. So the legal obligations now are that every company must be mitigating or controlling their psychosocial hazards. So if you go to a team of execs and you have a really good understanding on what the psychosocial code of practice is, that is going to be a very, very strong case to invest in this space. So we've covered this a lot before in other webinars. If you want more information, let me know in the chat or shoot me an email and I'll send it through to you. This is just a summary slide of what's happening in the psychosocial hazards space. So we know as we go through those 4 steps, you can find all of this on the Safe Work Australia website. We actually need a number of different departments involved in this. So not just work health and safety, also HR, also wellbeing and L&D, and your execs and your directors will be responsible for this if you have a psychological workers' comp claim end up in court. So they will really understand the gravity of that. That is the second very influential reason, impactful reason why execs will want to buy into this. Because what we are doing, essentially, when you've identified your psychosocial hazards and risks, is you're building your action plan straight into your wellbeing program. So we're taking the identified risks and we're saying, what can we do to mitigate these? There'll be some organizational steps you can take. There'll be some employee upskilling steps you can take, and you build all of that into L&D straight into your wellbeing program. So it's now all one big picture, as opposed to wellbeing being one thing, work health and safety being another. It is now all encompassing. And my opinion is, I think that's for the better. Any comments, questions on psychosocial hazards before we move on to having a look at some of the steps for investment? Okay. What are execs looking for to invest in wellbeing? I want to share with you, and boy, I wish I'd taken a photo of it, when I was sitting at a boardroom that looked almost identical to this. I'm up the top with my screen and my PowerPoint playing on the big TV, and I'm talking to a group of about 12 financial directors from different companies across Australia. And I am pitching to them why wellbeing is important. And some of them are bought in, and some of them think it's hogwash and they're sitting back, you know, arms folded. Yeah. What is all this? And what I did with this group of finance directors is I actually pitched a wellbeing program to them to get their opinion. Tell me what is important to you. Tell me what you are looking for you to actually invest and hand over a budget. So I felt like I was kind of on the inside of this finance director boardroom meeting. And all I was thinking is, I cannot wait to get this information out to my community and share with you direct from finance directors' mouths what they are looking for in order to hand over budget. So let me tell you what this secret is. I delivered in this presentation these 3 boxes that you can see. This is essentially all of the evidence you would need to try and get investment and budget to build your business case and pitch or sell, if you like. So number 1, legal obligations. Number 2, the return on investment that we know is 230%, super strong. In fact, one GM said to me, I don't know what you're selling, but if anything you are doing has got an ROI of more than $2, that is a better return than anything else I am doing in the organization. So just tell me how much money you want. So if your person that you are pitching to in your exec team is dollar driven, if they are responsible for the budget, if they are a data driven person, what you want to go into that meeting with is all the ROI evidence. So I've just got a summary here. $2.30, increased productivity and profitability, increased retention, reduced cost of presenteeism, and absenteeism costs do fall. You can find all of this evidence in detail with all of the references on my website. I just wanted to put a summary on here today to show you how much evidence we have. Now, the third one is VOI, so value on investment. Now, this is harder to measure, so beware. This is harder to measure. But if the exec you are pitching to is a people person, in other words, the head of HR, the head of people and culture, someone who is very focused on people and morale and everything you will need in that space, they are going to be looking for VOI. They're interested in morale, positivity, motivation. They're looking for performance. They're looking to attract high quality candidates. So the trick here is, if you have a number of execs that you need to pitch to, you might have on your board a director who is responsible for legal obligations, and they're going to want to know everything in that first box. You might have a finance director or a GM who is very data or dollar driven, and they will want to know the second box, ROI. You might have a head of people or HR who wants VOI. So take the data that is relevant to that person that'll really help convince them where they need to invest. Now, what do you think happened when I asked financial directors which of these metrics were of interest to them? Jump into the chat. Which of these lines that you can see in any of these three boxes, which of these metrics do you think a financial director is going to be really interested in to be able to invest? Have a guess. Jump into the chat and let me know. ROI, thank you, Beck. Any other guesses? I thought the same thing, by the way. Yep, same for you, Brad, ROI. When I asked them, I thought they were going to say ROI because I thought it was all about the actual dollar. Here's what they said that really surprised me. They said VOI is too hard to measure. Now, remember, these are finance directors. Too hard to measure, so I'm not even going to look at that. They said legal obligations are absolutely the biggest risk and the scariest thing out of all of this. So that is going to be the number one thing I am looking for, because I don't want to end up in court. I don't want to end up liable for a psychological workers' comp claim. So that would be number one. Now, number two really surprised me. Number two was not the actual $2.30. It was retention. And the reason they said they wanted that metric, that was very high value to them, was because they said, first of all, that's our biggest problem. So we've talked about that already, people leaving organizations. So retention is the biggest problem. And number two, it's super easy to measure. So they said, I can pull data today and I can compare it to my retention rates from yesterday, last week, 6 months ago. I can put a forecast in for my retention rates. So that was a really important one. So if you are pitching to finance, go in with legal obligations, go in with retention rates, bring in your own data to show that. That'll be really, really important. Now, when you are bringing your, let's call it a business case together, this is the next question I asked them. I said, hey, if we present to you our unique employee needs, number one, and then we present to you our customized wellbeing program, and then we asked you for budget, would you be willing to invest? And they said, yes, 100% we would, but nobody ever pitches to us like that. They said most commonly what people do is they come in and they say, they start at number 3, right? And they say, how much money can we have next year for the wellbeing budget? Or even better, they don't ask at all. They sit back and they just wait. And I have a lot of conversations with people in wellbeing roles, and I say, so how's your budget looking for this year? And they say, oh, we haven't been told about our budget yet. We're still waiting to hear. If I can encourage you and empower you to step up, if you are in that position where you are sitting back and you are waiting for budget, to step up and find your employee needs. I'm going to show you how to do that in 1 second. Customize your program. So come up with a solution to meet those needs and work out a budget for that and pitch it. So actually walk into whoever is in charge of the purse strings in your organization and say, here's what we're going to do. Here are the employee needs that we have collected. I'm going to share these with you. Number 2, here are the resources or the program we propose to try and meet the needs of our employees. Number 3, here's how much it costs. And by the way, here's all the evidence you need with the legal obs, the ROI and the VOI. I've seen many people do this and pitch, and I'll tell you it is way more successful than sitting back and waiting. So I highly recommend going in at this stage. Now, when you are building your business case, I just wanted to make sure that I clarified what the 3 key success criteria are for your wellbeing program. So you've got a really solid business case that you can take to your executives. So the 3 key success criteria that I uncovered in my master's research were: number 1, assess. So never assume what people want. Always go in, survey, do focus groups, always collect the data. Number 2, customize. So make sure we are tailoring not just the content, but also the delivery model to meet the needs of your employees. And number 3, engage, which is what we are talking about today. So top-down approach and ground-up approach. And we really need all 3 of those to make sure we have a meaningful employee wellbeing program. And by meaningful, I mean easy to access and meeting the needs of people. So when you collect your data, this is the first thing that you're wanting to put into your business case, right? You want to say, here's what our employee wellbeing data is telling us. This is an example of a wellbeing report that we have created here at CWH. So if you go ahead and you run a workplace wellbeing assessment through us, this is an example of the data that you get. So would this be helpful for you to see this for your own workforce? That first column you can see is a whole lot of metrics in relation to mental health. The middle one is in relation to overall health, and the last one is physical health. So what I do is I color code them in green. They are usually sitting above the Australian standard, so above that benchmark. And in red, they are sitting below the Australian guideline or benchmark. So in other words, the red are the risks that you want to be addressing. So if you took this as an example for your organization, you might want to go ahead and just highlight 2 or 3 metrics that represent the highest risk to you. So if I have a look at this page, I would say, okay, under mental health, I've got 13% of our employees really struggling. And in that next question, do you have at least one person in your life you can talk with about your mental health? So 17% of these employees said, no, I don't have anyone. Those metrics are showing a very high risk, both to the safety of that individual employee, but also to the organization. So that would definitely be an objective I would move across into the wellbeing program. Under overall health, you might want to pick sleep. If the range of sleep people are telling you is somewhere between 0 and 9, but the average is 6, you've got people going to work who are sleep deprived and fatigued, and we know that automatically increases the risk of accidents and injuries. So that might be a second one. And your third one might be, okay, let's look at drinks, not drinking enough water and drinking too much soft drink. Let's do some education on healthy drinking and getting access to healthy drinking. So you might just want to pick 2 or 3 things that you go forward with. So I just wanted to put on one page here to make it really clear. This is an example business case. So if you were building a deck or a report to present to your executives, this is what I would recommend you put in it. Number 1, our employee health risks, and don't necessarily give them the entire report and all of the data, but you might just want to pick out these few things that we've just highlighted as the biggest risks. And then you want to present our customized wellbeing program. So you might, this is just an example one, you might have picked 4 different topics. So in this example, we've got nutrition, we've got sleep, we've got sparking wellbeing conversations, and we've got breaking down mental health stigma. And put as much detail as you can in there to show that it's already designed and ready to be implemented. So show whether you are doing on-site or online events, whether you're supplementing with videos, what your communication plan looks like. Make sure you've got your launch of your wellbeing program and your wellbeing champions right at the start of the year. So you'll go into your business case and say, here is what we are proposing. And never forget to ask for the dollars. Wellbeing budget. Here is the investment that is required. So you might want to break it down into financial years or even into 6 monthly periods. I find that is typically a way that financial directors like to work. So you might want to say the investment up until June 30 is X dollars, and then the investment until the end of December is X dollars. And by the way, what you get back for that investment of dollars is not only meeting the needs of your employee health risks that we've created in this program, but you're complying with your legal obligations. You're getting an ROI of 230% and you're getting a VOI. And here's all the references for this evidence to show you. Questions? Have a look at this business case. Let me know if there's anything else I have left out of this. I wonder if this is doable for you. Does this feel like a process that would work or that you're willing to try? So risks, solutions, and budget. And we are literally going in and we are pitching this. Do you feel more confident to secure exec buy-in? So if you are feeling better, can you let me know? Put a yes in the chat box. If you are not feeling more confident, that's okay. Just pop your question into the chat and let's explore. Let's have a conversation. Let's put it out to the team. Do you feel more confident in securing exec buy-in? Let me know yes in the chat, or if you don't, pop a question in and let's explore and flesh out a bit more, or put it out to the group and see if we can come up with solutions for you. Yes, we've got 5 yeses. So Brad, Emma, Sarah, Toby, Francesca, excellent. So confidence is building. Any questions, put them in now. Really happy to answer those before we move on to the ground up approach. So this is the first section in top down. So if you've got a question specifically about top down, this is the time to ask it. Okay, no questions. I take that as a good sign. Let's go ground up. What is ground up? Ground up to me is doing an expression of interest and looking for wellbeing champions amongst your individual employees. Why do I love this so much? Because I've tried it, I've tested it, I've proven it. It makes your job a million times easier. So instead of trying to go out and spruiking wellbeing all the time on your own, on top of the million other things you have to do, you have a group of you all doing that, all role modeling, all promoting, all trying to engage as many employees as possible. So it does make your life a whole lot easier. How do we do this? So there is an expression of interest template that I'm going to give you at the end of today's session. I want to show you what that is to start with. So I really recommend doing an EOI in your workplace. And there's a couple of criteria you want to include when you're putting out an expression of interest, looking for wellbeing champions to be absolute champions to help you in your organization. So the list on the left, you want to make sure they're well respected, they're well connected, and they're highly influential. So you need them to be someone who has got the gift of the gab or is really well connected with other people that would potentially be influential. So, hey, we're going along to this event. Hey, we're going to participate in this challenge. Hey, let's do this mental health training together. You really want someone who's good like that. You want them to have capacity to contribute. Boy, this one's challenging, right? Because capacity is really hard right now. So just a note on capacity. What we don't want to ask wellbeing champions to do is to write strategy, write an action plan, conduct the assessment, manage the whole program, because capacity is a challenge and they will just quit. They will stop coming to your meetings. They will drop like flies. So within your own team, if you're in HR, work health and safety, or wellbeing, write your wellbeing strategy within your team. And when you get to your EOI, what you're asking them to do is that third point, role model and prioritize your own health and wellbeing, and be confident and capable of encouraging and motivating peers. So you want them to do that by promoting and advocating health and wellbeing in our workplace. That is the most important thing you want your wellbeing champions to do to get this ground up approach. You want them to be people encouraging engagement, not writing strategy. So in the EOI template that you can download at the end, all of this information is on the template. So all those words on the right, it's words you would put in your expression of interest, and they are all included in the template. Let me share with you when we did an EOI when I was at Johnson & Johnson. I was the wellbeing lead for health and wellbeing. We had 1,500 employees across Australia and New Zealand. And we put out an EOI very, very similar to this. It was actually specifically about mental health champions, but it's the same process. Can I tell you how inundated with interest we were? We had over 100 people, almost 10% of our population, put their hand up and say, we want in. We are passionate, we are interested. And we made a really big mistake, and we didn't put enough criteria in there, and we just had way too many people, and it became a really big problem because they weren't necessarily the right people. So what I have learned over the years is making sure we've got the selection criteria, well respected, got capacity, can role model, and are confident of encouraging others. We want to make sure we've got those criteria nailed so that we can get the right people doing those wellbeing champion jobs. So this is an example of a client of ours at Burwood Council in New South Wales. I invited Tara to come along today to talk, but unfortunately she had another meeting that she had to attend. Burwood Council are running wellbeing champion training with us next month. And what we are covering in their training is really about how to be a wellbeing champion, so the importance and the roles and expectations. And then we're going in and we're actually training on content. So we're looking at stress, the early warning signs of stress. We're looking at safe mental health conversations, psychological safety, how we role model, and some wellbeing tips for them as champions. So they've already done the expression of interest. They're now kicking off their Wellbeing Champion program with this 2-hour training that we are running for them. And then their champions will go on the rest of the year, and they will promote, champion, advocate for the program. So it's going to make Tara and Tara's team just have so much more support, make their job a whole lot easier. Which leads me to the announcement that only you guys are going to hear today, because we're launching on the 1st of March, which is our brand new Wellbeing Champion Training Program. We are running for the first time because in the survey we put out last year, we had numerous requests for Wellbeing Champion training. So here's a little sneak peek on what this training looks like. We are going to run this as a 6-month program. It is going to kick off in May and run through till October. So it avoids some of that crazy end of year period where everyone's too busy. Everyone will be well and truly trained and ready to go by then. It is for anyone in the wellbeing community. So that's anyone working in a business who is wanting to uplift and enhance wellbeing in your workplace, but you don't necessarily have the background or the qualifications or the experience to do it. So I hear this all the time, right? People saying to me, hey, I work in work health and safety, or I work in insurance, or I've come from a completely different job, but I actually really want to do something personally about well-being in our workplace. So you are the perfect person, if that is you, to become a wellbeing champion and to do some training with the intention of leading well-being with confidence. So getting a much better, well-rounded understanding of some of these really important topics So you can see in that topic list, we cover being a role model, we cover psych safety, we cover physical fitness, mental fitness, deep dive into workplace ideas, programs, and resources. And then by October, we're actually creating customized wellbeing programs for the following year. So it's a really solid foundational training for anyone who is interested. We're opening registrations on the 1st of March. They are going to come out in our newsletter. So keep your eyes peeled for this brand new Wellbeing Champion training program, launching in a couple of weeks, which is super exciting. Okay, questions. Jump into the chat. Do you feel more confident with a ground up approach? Give me a yes, or put your question in. Let's explore, what are we missing with the ground up approach? So this is Wellbeing Champions, this is advocates in the field, this is your employees. Do you feel more confident with a ground up approach? If it's a yes, can you type in yes into the chat? If it's a no, what is your question? Pop that in and I will answer those before I open the code for you to download your free resources. Thank you, Toby, Yori, yes, Francesca and Brad. Excellent. Any questions about ground up approaches? Can't see any yet. Good to see. Confidence is a little bit building from where we were. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of case studies where we've seen wellbeing champions or top-down approaches work. So when you get to the QR code at the end, you'll see this menu in here. So feel free to download our wellbeing menu for 2024. Brad, do you have a questionnaire to screen the wellbeing champions? So when you download the expression of interest template, it actually has the selection criteria in there. So you would build that into a form and you would distribute it out. Yep, so that's exactly what the selection criteria are. Absolutely feel free to add more in, whatever you think might be relevant to your workplace. But I just cover those basic things we saw on the previous slide, making sure they've got capacity, making sure they're well connected, all those bits and pieces. So yes, you'll be able to find that in the template. The wellbeing menu we've built for this year, you can see is split up into feel good and fun, which is always how I recommend you start. You kick off your wellbeing program at the start of the year. Mid-year reset, so you can really deep dive into some of your psychosocial risks. It might be a risk of burnout, it might be high stress, it might be workload and job demands that you found being the biggest problem, so we can really dive into those. And then the end of the year, when we're down the Are You Okay Day and the mental health month end of the year, we can go into some of these more sensitive but super important topics under support and care. So just as an example of top-down and ground-up approaches, Burwood Council I've told you about already. Queensland Government is doing a big research project that I'm leading at the moment. And what we are doing is an approach of let's call them wellbeing champions. In the red meat industry, they're all HSRs, so health and safety reps. And we're going and training at that level. So we're upskilling health and safety reps and wellbeing champions on the topics, on the conversations, on all of the resources, and they are cascading that information out to all of their teams. So that's a really nice example. I guess it depends where your HSRs are, whether they're leaders or they might be just within teams. It could be ground up or top down, but of going in at that level of wellbeing champions and HSRs and then cascading your information out. With our corporate clients, Nestle would be an example here, who have fantastic wellbeing champion distribution. So they've put wellbeing champions through this expression of interest template. They've collected is not the right word. They have identified the right employees in their workforce who can be really solid wellbeing champions. And they've actually made sure the distribution or the disbursement is across every site. So each department or each different location has got a wellbeing champion there. So that's a great way to make sure you've got really good coverage. Okay, here is the QR code. Feel free to download your tools. You'll get the Wellbeing Champion template in there. You'll get the checklist of the key success criteria you need to build your program. There's a 2024 health dates calendar, and you'll get the wellbeing menu and delivery model. So feel free to order whatever you want in there. There's also a question, if you need any support or you want to partner with CWH, tick any of those boxes that you think you might need support with, and I'd be happy to send you an email and send you a proposal or some information on that particular one. So that code will take you to a form. You can go ahead and order all of your free wellbeing resources. Before we close today's wellbeing event, I just wanted to invite you to the next couple of events that we have running. We're actually doing them weekly at the moment. Next week, we are doing self-care trends and innovations. There's a code on there if you'd like to register for free for that. On the 21st of Feb, we're doing difficult and challenging conversations at work. That's hosted by Bill Carson. A lot of you probably know Bill already. 27th of Feb, we're doing optimizing the social brain to build engagement. So Charlotte Jamison is hosting this, and this is about reconnecting people in the workplace. And then I'm hosting the 5th of March, Tricks of a Nutritionist for Super Busy Days. I would love you to join us at any of these events coming up. I'm going to leave the chat box open. If you've got any questions, comments, ideas, feel free to jump in or say goodbye in the chat box now, and then I'm going to close the session very shortly. Big thanks for joining today. It was lovely having a small group here. We got some nice interaction in the chat box, which was great. I don't see any questions coming through. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Beck. Absolute pleasure. I've got a recording of this if you want it. I'll look forward to seeing you at the next event. Thanks for coming, everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye.